for the Drew Sutton Leadership Show, lighting the way with real leaders, real stories, and real impacts. Because when leaders stop growing, the darkness wins. All right, welcome back to another amazing episode of the Drew Sutton Leadership Show. Today, we're answering the question, what does innovation look like in an AI-powered / AI-obsessed world? To answer that question, we have a fantastic guest, Yaron Flint. Yaron is a seasoned corporate innovator and business development expert with over 20 years of global experience across consulting, private equity, and operational leadership. He specializes in turning bold ideas into structured innovation strategies that scale. He's been worked in sectors like automotive, Industry 4.0, smart materials, and construction tech. He's also the author of the new book, Innovative Business Development, where he breaks down how to onboard innovative external innovation and mentor teams to results that actually stick. Just to comment here, the reason I'm super excited to have Yaron on the show, he's one of the people that I just generally love working with. He's one of the most clever minds that I've seen in innovation. He understands what it takes to do in corporate and in private sector. Just a super fun guy to talk to. So I think you'll see that as the show. So welcome to the show, Yaron.
Thank you. Everything is now downhill after that introduction.
Everything. Yeah. Well, you're one of the easier folks to write it for. You've done so much stuff. But before we get into that, let's talk about some of your like kind of personal things. You have 2 black belts.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are in what art of pain have you mastered?
Yeah. So I think a lot of people, to understand really a culture, they go and like taste the cuisine and be among people. For me, it was always about the martial arts. So when you want to really embed yourself in a society or a new community, the best way is to see what they developed in order to protect themselves, all over the world. So I started from jiu-jitsu, which is a Japanese traditional martial art, the art of samurais, and kind of worked my way through Kanjutsu, Iaido, and then I landed in Arnis, which is a Filipino martial art.
I love it. The Filipino martial arts. So jiu-jitsu, I'm a fan of jiu-jitsu. I'm not a great practitioner, but I do super enjoy it. I've been teaching my kids how to do it. And I tell you, my 11-year-old daughter can throw a heck of an armbar. She knows how to get into guard and then push up, create space, and then flip around and throw me into an armbar, to the point that my shoulders don't let her practice anymore. So with the Filipinos, is that stick fighting or?
Yeah, partially it's a stick fighting, but you've seen that a lot in movies like Bourne Identity and Taken by Liam Neeson. It's more of a mid-range knife fighting. So it's weaponry.
Yeah, that makes sense. I did a little bit of Paquita Tertia, and one of the things they said is that we teach weapons first because that's the most practical, and then we teach hands as you improve with skill. And I was like, because most martial arts start with, well, let's teach you the handwork and footwork, and then we'll progress to weapons, which makes sense. But if you're just trying to teach somebody to be useful, give them a knife.
And the traditional, the very ancient one, and I don't want to turn this podcast into a martial art podcast, but this is very interesting, did start from weapons. And basically they said, okay, now you lost your weapon. What do you do from that point onwards? Because the first initial, instinct of a warrior was to draw the weapon.
Yeah, totally. And I think that this is why you're so good at innovation. Because I've led innovative teams at large companies, at small companies. I've worked with startups, as have you. And I think what I run into frequently is folks are like, well, look, what should we do here? Let's have a brainstorming session. Let's have an ideation session. And very rarely do people want to start with, well, let's kill the problem. Like, let's define the problem and let's go directly at it and let's go attack it. Most people they enjoy the art of walking around the problem, but they don't want to talk about getting to the problem. Do you connect with that, or how do you go about innovation?
100%. I think innovation, it's you can learn a lot of the animals. Basically, I wrote a newsletter about that. In Storm, you have the buffalo versus cows, where buffaloes run directly into a storm, thus shortening the period of time they are in a storm, and cows run away from storms, thus increasing the amount of time they are in the storm. And these are exactly what corporations do with innovation. Some run away from it and some try to face it heads on.
Yes. This is, and I don't know why people don't want to address the problem. Maybe they enjoy the comfort of having the same old problem that they semi understand. Why do you think it is that people avoid just driving into the storm like that?
It's very simple. They don't want to rattle to bolt. For them, it works. Don't touch it. So if this works for me, I'm not going to think about what will happen if it doesn't work. Let's continue. Everything is okay. Let's disregard everything else. People don't like the uncomfortableness of changing things. They like the status quo. So the first thing you learn about innovation is defining the status quo. Question.
Yes. Um, when you come into an organization, um, how do you go about helping change that mindset? Do you bring a wrestling mat and get your black belts out, or how do you start working with those mid-level meters, the mid-level leaders, and start talking about innovation?
It's very funny because my introduction speech to Stanley Black and Decker when I started working there, my boss asked me to explain why people need to work with me, and I said very simple: I have 2 black belts. After you put that on the table, everyone works with you. But kidding aside, I think it's very, very important. And when people ask me why I was successful in what I did, I say I'm a great storyteller. And this is a good element because a storyteller is not a person who knows how to tell a story. It's a person who knows how to relate to his audience and tell the story in the exact way that the audience wants to hear it. So he's very intuitive to what the audience want to hear and knows how to tell a different topic in 5, 6, 7 versions that will relate to them.
I super love that. When I work with my clients, I always tell them generally we first do submission and strategy, and then we start talking marketing. And I tell them it's not about like coming up with just the words to say. You have to, I call it rocking and rolling. You have to have these like core rocks. This is what your client is trying to accomplish. This is what's valuable to them. This is what the friction they have in their current system. But oftentimes you have to, you come at the story this way for one guy, and then you come at the story this way for another guy.
Exactly.
And the key to a really great leader is you understand all the rocks that are in that stream, and then you can roll from one rock to the other one. So I call it rocking and rolling. What's your favorite way to go about telling stories? If you had like one, like kind of out of your hip pocket, do you have a framework that you like for telling stories?
I don't think there's a framework. It totally depends, like I said, on the person sitting on the other side. So you need to really be attentive and to understand what makes him tick. What are the roadblocks that you see? Some people are afraid of change. Some people are not aware of what can be done. Some people just don't know how to address it. You need to understand exactly what will get this person excited and what are the roadblocks that he's setting in front of himself in order to overcome them, surpass them, go around them. And that's the whole idea. So being intuitive and really understanding the counterpart or this person sitting in front of you is the most critical element, and that defines how you tell the story.
I love the human element there. I encourage, I just love that, because you have to sit down and you have to say to the other person, what are you trying to solve here? Because there's the problem that this may be the root cause of the problem, but in sales, and all leadership is sales, we're trying to figure out what are the people's pain points and what are they going to connect with. I absolutely love that.
So going into that direction, I think this is the misconception with a lot of organizations. They come with a conception that if you ask the other side, what are your pain points, he will give you a direct answer to that. And what you find out in innovation, and that this is rarely the case, which means people confuse what they want with what they need, right? And if you ask a person, Henry Ford said this very well, articulated very well. If I asked my customers what do they want, they would say faster horses, because people tend to focus on what's currently in their hand or at their usage and say, I want this better, instead of what am I really trying to solve? And that's the critical element of defining a challenge. It's really going back to the root of what I'm trying to solve rather than how I'm making what I'm making now better.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think, Steve Jobs is famous for this. He says that I'm more proud of the stuff we didn't do than the stuff, that we did do. In other words, the ability to say no, the ability to really hone in on the thing that we're trying to solve here. And I think that it's missing in corporate culture. Clay Christensen wrote the book, The Innovator's Dilemma, and he talks about how basically middle management's job is to reduce risk, and the financial controller's job is to measure efficiency. And so you put those two things together, and you make sure that we are efficiently never coming up with new ideas, and then companies start to stagnate. Do you see that a lot in the companies that you work with, and how do you address that?
Definitely. Let's take legal and procurement, for example. The whole intention of legal is reducing risk. The best way to reduce risk is not doing anything. So if you let the legal framework or the legal people run a company, you would not get anything done. Same goes for procurement in any way. Procurement are the safety guards of every company. And if you don't involve them and work together with them, they become bouncers. And they become very suspicious of everything you're trying to bring. So you need to understand who are exactly the people that could be roadblocks and turn them into your biggest supporters by working and collaborating together with them.
Yeah, I love that, because they bring huge amounts of value to the company. There's things that I would like to do as an innovator that I can't do because it's not legally allowed, or it's not regulation allowed, or it's just too risky. So they need to be a part of the team, but you have to help each other work together and help each other appreciate each other. Yeah, I love that. So
and let's take procurement for example. I think it's a great example because usually they are very, very suspicious of every innovative idea that comes into the company, because they are supposed to bring all the new vendors to the organization. So now if you're working with startups, you're kind of creating a way that surpasses them or goes around them or on top of them. They don't feel very, very comfortable with this if they're not involved. So you have to involve them and make them understand that this is part of the process. It's not trying to replace what they're doing.
Yes, today's business is what we do today, and it is very defined. But innovation requires us moving outside of that.
Mm-hmm.
So talk to me here. You had some really great stuff to said in the pre-show, and that is, sorry, my camera's died here, and that is that innovation is not product enhancement. And then you used a couple other words that I think are really helpful. We talked about innovation, invention, integration. Talk me through that triangle and what corporations get wrong.
Definitely. And I think let's start from the point of what you mentioned. A lot of people or corporations get confused between innovation and invention. Innovation is not invention. It's not coming up with the brightest and greatest ideas. It's all about the integration and putting it part of the product roadmap. So innovation is all about implementation, and you can take things that are already mature in other markets and integrate them into yours. You don't need to invent the wheel. You kind of redefine it, right? So you need to understand that the process is not coming up with the best ideas out there. It's really how to make an impact and integrate them as part of your product roadmap.
I love that. I remember when you said it pre-show, and I remember you saying it right now. Innovation is not invention, it's integration. So what are the roadblocks? What do people get wrong when they sit down and they want to think of themselves as smart? I was one of those guys. I was trying to prove how smart I was rather than how useful I was for a long time in the company. How do you get those guys to sit down and brainstorm productively for something that's going to actually integrate into the company's operations?
It's very simple. You start from the pain points. You rarely get a person's attention more than really trying to help him solve a problem that he's been facing and is not being able to solve. So you come and say, what are the current challenges you're facing that you try to solve? You were not able to do so. Let me help you solve them and become better in what you're doing. I don't see a lot of people who would say no to that, right? It's just an amount of, are you now wasting my time, or do you know what you're doing? And now you need to show him that you know what you're doing. And you would say, this guy knows what he's doing. He's supporting me. He's going to solve all my challenges. Yeah, this is a clear win. So that's the whole idea of how do you start with people who are suspicious, don't really know, or don't really want to do innovation.
I love it. Can you tell me some stories about some like aha moments that those teams had? A lot of times the innovation team is almost like they're not just pulling the company forward, they're just like pulling away from the company.
Exactly.
Talk to me about some stories where you've had innovation teams that were so excited about innovation that they stopped being useful to the company, and then how you helped them transition back. Tell me one of your favorite stories.
So you mean a company that started, or a team that started to do innovation and it was all over the place rather than didn't start to do anything at all?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think one of the biggest challenges is where you have all these innovation teams going around without any structure, and then people start stepping on each other's toes without really understanding who's responsible for what, who's doing what. And you see that usually with the financial and operational team, let's say CVC and venture client team. How do they work together? How do they interact together? And the most interesting part is putting them both in the same room and explaining to them how they can benefit from each other and what the other side would bring to the table that they don't have. And that's how you start collaborating and working together as a team. The whole importance is kind of like, think about it, it's like kind of like the biggest responsibility of a coach of a national basketball team is not putting or teaching the players how to play well. He's getting all the best players out there. He's getting them the whole I think importance, or the essence of what he's doing is creating a team out of them and showing how large ego people can work with each other. And that's the most important element. So these are the things that I absolutely love in every company that I join.
Yes, I love that. So you've written a book. We're here to talk about the book today, Innovative Business Development. This is a great book. Initially I thought it was a good book for middle managers or folks that are leading the innovation team. You have a little bit of different take on that. So talk to me, who is this book for? And then tell me the story where you're like, you know what, I need to write this book.
So let's start from the end. When I started working for Continental, which is a German company, I came to them and said, show me the guidebook that you're working on with open innovation frameworks. And they said, there's no guidebook. It's a trial and error. And I said, this is very, very odd. And I started looking around with many, many companies, and I found that this is the commonality. There are a lot of books that are written about internal innovation processes, but none about open innovation frameworks, which means how do you start collaborating with the outside world? A lot of the books about inspirational, why open innovation is important, but not really guidebooks that say, this is where you start from, this is what you avoid. And I said, if no one wrote about it, I should. And that kind of pushed me to write this book. And I basically wanted to write a book that I would love to have when I started working. And that's how I wrote it. And I thought it would be, like you said, for people like myself who are starting the innovation process, or maybe even very, very mature in that, to give them structure. And I found out that the best clientele of this book are executives. When they're coming to me and say, oh, we had so many innovation teams coming in. Everyone said, I'm doing it the right way. Everyone is pushing and trying to take the budget to their direction. I really didn't understand who's supposed to control it. Who's the best team? How should I approach it? So putting everything in the right structure, in the right framework, helped me a lot, just to understand, what am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? How should I address this? And this is the most important thing.
No, it totally is. If you're doing the right job as an executive, to quote Warren Buffett, you got to hire home run hitters, and you can't tell them how to swing. You got to find people that are smarter than you in every category, which means you're not the smartest guy in the room. And if that's the case, that's great. But then it becomes really hard to navigate, well, of these smart guys, who should I build the strategy around? So I love that your book helps the executives sit down and think through, this is what I want out of my team. Because I can tell you, having been the guy that runs the innovation roadmap, we kind of desperately crave input. Like, we're like, well, I can take it anywhere we want. Where do you want to go, boss? And so I think your book's fantastic because it gives executives that framework to think through how they want innovation, so they can actually start implementing things and affecting the bottom line. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, one story that really resonates with me, when I wrote the book, usually when you work with a publisher, they provide a content editor. And I got an amazing content editor. I absolutely love this guy, Jim Spur. He used to run the innovation and AI team for IBM. And when I got him as a content editor, I was intimidated. I said, "Wow, this guy has been doing this for so many years. He will basically have so many comments on my book. What am I doing even here?" And he got the book, and it was the opposite way around. He said, "Yaron, where was this book when I started? This is like a book that everyone should read when they're starting the innovation process." And I was like, "Okay, I'm doing something right here."
Yes, I love that. This is why I wanted to have you on the show. As we were talking through this, of course, I've done innovation in corporate world. I've done startups. I've mentored folks. I've started businesses. I can tell you, sometimes it's hard to figure out where to go. And having a framework, I think EOS is a fantastic framework for running a company. The entrepreneur operating system, I think it's fantastic. You get up into the corporate world, there's ERPs, there's business operating systems, SAP, it's a double-edged sword, but it is a good system. But nobody's really writing about how to run the innovation side of your business to look forward. Everybody wants to quote the idea, well, don't be making typewriters in the, in the world of computers, and don't be like Kodak, who didn't make the transition to digital. But nobody's talking about exactly how to do that. So I think that's super fun that you have that. You found a way to get traction on that question.
And I think this is very, very timely wise, because if you think about it, and this is one of the keynotes that I deliver, it's called "Is Corporate Innovation Dead?" What you've been seeing that during turmoils and harsh times, companies start to cut innovation. That's the first thing they cut off, right? Because they see this as a R&D cost center rather than the engine for the future. And when you think about it, it's like the same process that Q&A and product management went through a few decades ago, where it's all over the place. There was no structure. Everyone understood that this is important, but it was kind of a theater all over the place. And then it became structured with ESOs, professionalized. You saw experienced people come in. And this is exactly what I'm seeing with innovation. Companies have not been fed up with innovation. They want to do it properly. They want to not waste time and not waste money, and do it as structured and more professional as they can to reduce the cost and risk.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. I think that, 1970s, 1980s, 1990s, there was so much new technology out there that it was easy to be innovative. All you had to do is slap a website on it, put some Java code into it, connect it to the Internet of Things. And we're just like, I call it the bumper sticker of innovation. We're just going to slap this sticker on this new, now your stove has a touchscreen. Congratulations, innovation. I think that's like new features. And as an engineer, of course, our engineering motto is, if it's not broke, it needs more features. That's the engineering motto. So you can come in now and you can give us a framework for that. I'm going to pivot the conversation and talk about the giant cybernetic elephant in the room. Is it enough just to say we're now AI enabled? Is AI innovation, and how should we as corporates think about that?
So I think a lot of corporations are kind of baffled with buzzwords, right? It's not the first time we've seen buzzwords come all around the place. We've seen that with commercial aviation in the previous century. We've seen that with the internet. Then we had like ESG topics, AR, VR. Every few years you hear the buzzwords. Now I think AI is kind of different, because it really redefined the way we work with people. But again, it's not anything new. When I look at AI, it looks like, to me, very much like commercial aviation, like the internet changed things. It gave us a tool to do better things or work in a better way or more efficient way. So AI, and that's the perspective that people need to remember. It's a tool to enable you to do things better, to be more professional, to come with better products, but it won't change dramatically the way you think. It will change dramatically the way you interact. And still, you're making business relationships with people. So AI cannot replace that, the human to human factor.
This is why we connect so well, I think, is that At its core, business and innovation, because innovation is just a better way to do business, is about connecting human value together. I'm
Exactly.
really good at this. I have this skill. You're really good at this. Let's trade our value with each other. We're both better off for it, right?
Mhm.
And if you go at innovation, you're just slapping, NFTs on top of your innovation. You're like, look at me. I'm in the blockchain. It's a private blockchain that's held on my servers. Like, okay, well, you missed the point of what a blockchain is. Um, it's innovation is fundamentally a human activity, and you can't just slap AI on something. You have to ask yourself, what are the humans trying to accomplish? I think AI's big benefit is the amount of work that I have to do to go from idea to minimum viable product is like an order of like 100 times easier with AI. And so AI is an enabler, but that's all it is. It's an enabler to solve the human value question faster. Um,
Exactly. And this kind of touches into another misconception where people think open innovation is about the set of actions that you're doing, which means how are you working with the outside world? It's not about the set of the action, it's the mindset. You need to really appreciate and understand that the outside world can educate you as much as you can educate them. For example, M&A is not an open innovation platform or framework. This is still a company wanting to control and own everything. It's a win-win partnership that is a truly open innovation. And when you define this kind of innovation as the mentality and not set of actions, AI by default becomes a tool set rather than the differentiator or the things that you pursue.
I love that. So now you're bringing up something else that we connect on, which is how do you work with large corporations?
Mhm.
Again, having been inside the big box and outside the big box, the big box is not super great as being a partner. We like these strategies. We like let's buy you, let's bankrupt you, or let's completely ignore you and discredit you, right? And
Mhm.
that's how we like to partner with people. We're like, well, you can be my supplier, or I can buy you, or I can tank you. Obviously, that's not great for the client or the customer at all. And small business generally looks at the big box and says, "Oh, look, a giant bag of money. What do I need to do to get that giant bag of money?" Which is also mostly not helpful. So, talk me through the problems that we have big business wise, and how we should rethink that partnership so that innovation can flow across the small business to enterprise level boundary.
So I think you first need to understand the flow or the evolution of how innovation happens. Usually, when a company decides to innovate, it becomes from a necessity when they understand that they cannot answer the entire set of what the world wants with only internal capabilities. So they try to develop their additional internal capabilities or connect themselves to the outside world to learn from them. Okay, so when they get to that point, the first transaction that they do is usually an M&A, saying still, I still want to control everything. I need to learn from the outside world, so let's buy it. Then they understand they cannot buy everything and they might even stifle the organization that they're buying. So they start investing into companies. But again, not from a strategical point of view, just from an evolutionary point of view. And understanding that they can get a foot in the door just by small capital injection. Then they mature or move into the strategical evaluation. I have now a portfolio of companies. What am I doing with them? How am I really applying value to the organization by these portfolio companies? And then they start really rethinking or really re strategizing what they want to do. In the meantime, they come to an understanding that the outside world might do things better than them. So you see that things like white labeling or third party integrations. And the most mature level eventually is the partnership, like I said. And you can usually see this in trade show when you can see logos side by side. No one is hiding behind anyone, right? Companies working together as a win-win full solution. Now, if you think about it, startups look at the world the opposite way. They start from the partnership angle, they're looking for a partner, and they're saying, if this works, you're going to invest in me. And if this really works, you're going to buy me out. And that's the bridge and gap you need to overcome.
Yeah. I think what's interesting is, I mean, you've kind of skated around the idea of humility. Like the CEOs, the executives need to have the humility to realize that we fit in the market. We're not supposed to dominate this market necessarily. We have things that we're not great at. We have things that we are great at. And then having the humility to really understand where your company is supposed to work in the community, in the business
Mhm.
community, and the community at large. And then what role your partners work with you rather than, I think you used the word control. Um, Man, a lot of really bad things happen when the beginning of the conversation is control.
Yeah.
So, is this one of the things that you do that you can help companies come in and find partners and then figure out how to work with them?
So first, I need to help companies understand what they're trying to achieve. This is usually the case when they come in and say, "Hey, I want to do innovation," and you say, "Why? Did you even test it against other things? How did you come to this discussion?" I'm having so many discussions with corporations who said this is a strategical level of decision that I made, and when you talk to them, you understand that it's not strategical; it's tactical. They basically started from the actions and think this is the strategy. So starting from a point of let's have a strategy, let's understand where you're heading, where you're trying to get to, set the goals there, and then we will define what will enable you to get there. So there's no, like martial arts, there's no one size fits all. You need to understand, first of all, what's the mentality, the culture of the organization, what are they trying to achieve, and then find the exact fit for them to operate in that field and get the best results out of it.
No, I think that's a great way to think of it. And we've talked about this too. I think this is one of the things that we connect on is that there's a difference between strategy, which is I want to go take that mountain. The goal is to be on top of that mountain in 3 or 5 years. And tactics, which is I know how to drive the oxen cart that I have in front of me, and I know the general path that I'm going to take to get on top of the mountain. And there's a big gap between I want to be on the top of that mountain and I'm driving the ox cart. Those are two different activities. You tell a really great story and change the names to protect the guilty, of course. But you tell this really interesting story about a company that wanted to enter a market. And so it started doing market research, which just turned into some bookmarking. So why don't you tell me that story? Because I think it really clarifies this issue.
Okay, so I think you're relating to this story. When I entered the company, and again, we're not going to name names, I asked them, can you show me the strategical analysis that you're doing compared to the competition? And when I saw it was all features of products comparing themselves to the competitors, I was like, how is this strategical? You are basically comparing your features to the other side and deciding how do you will enhance your products to become as well as they are. You're setting yourself to be a follower because you're always waiting for the other side to act first. And this comes from martial arts. You never wait for the other side to act first. You need to really think about where they're heading, what are they trying to do, what are they trying to achieve, and find the best way to get there before them.
Yes. I'm going to interrupt you here because this is such an important point. Benchmarking is important. Like when I was in college, I worked at a wheel manufacturing, like we made wheels, like the steel part of the wheel for Toyota and for Ford and for other folks. So we would go out every 6 months and we would buy the competitor's wheel that was kind of in our price range, right? Like, okay, what features do they have? How thick is their paint? How many stamping? When you're in any sort of industry, you get really nerdy and you can compare features against the others. That's an important thing to do because it keeps you better and but you got to do that next level analysis, which is why are we doing this? When I was in helicopters, we used to go to the air shows and we would take pictures of all of our competitors' rotor systems. We were very, very dorky. We were in the rotor systems. But we would then go back and we would spend the next 6 months analyzing the rotors that we had seen, doing the math backwards and saying, what do we think they're pushing towards over the next 5 years? And then the other activity is in the helicopter market about 15 years ago, we were selling 400 helicopters a year. That's just that's old news, but interesting news. So then asking yourself, how much of that market can I get? The new features that they're trying to put in, how much market share are they going to gain? What are the upcoming contracts? The idea, benchmarking is not okay, we did it. Check, boss. That was a good half-hour meeting. It's like a really interesting process of moves and counter moves on a chessboard.
So let's talk about that because this is extremely important what you said. And this is where a lot of companies get it wrong. Basically, they either confuse strategy with tactics, really what you're doing as a set of actions as a strategy and vice versa. The better ones are the companies that have a strategy and have a tactics, but it's a one-way stream. When they say, this is the strategy, go and execute. The best companies understand that this needs to be a feedback loop. You change your strategy according to what you see in the field. You adjust, you change. So you have a strategy, you go and set the tactics to to achieve it. You understand what others are doing, and you go back to the strategy to redefine it, reshape it, move it, and change it along as the world is changing. And this feedback loop is the first most important thing when you putting strategy and tactics together.
I love that. I love that. So who is who is the person that makes the biggest difference in the company? A lot of times people say, well, it's the CEO because they're the CEO, but you and I, we've worked in big companies, we've been leaders. It's kind of hard to steer that ship sometimes. Like, if when you're doing a small company, you can put in an input and you can turn the sailboat. But if you have an ocean tanker, it takes a little bit of time to turn that ship. So then you might say, well, it's the individual innovator. It's the guy that's making the inventions in the company. But I can tell you, having been that guy, it's hard to push innovation up. Well, then maybe it's the middle management. Well, having been that guy, it's really hard to kind of filter through the stuff that the lab guys are thinking of and the strategic objectives. Who is the best person in the company to lead innovation?
I would love to say that this is the professional innovation manager that they bring. But one important element in what you're saying is companies don't have one point of decision making. Even the best CEO would not do things against his team members and not run a tactical or a technical decision without consulting with his technical guys. It's basically taking a collective ideas and deciding how to act upon when he has these collective ideas. So companies, even when they're very hierarchy leveled, they're still multi-layered. And you need to get the buy-in of a lot of people, not just one, in order to get through the company. This is the first thing that you learn in politics in an organization. There's no one guy who decides on everything. It's a bunch of people. How to get to them is very simple. You just keep on asking the names that keep resurfacing. These are the most important things. People. It could be the higher level, but usually it's the people who've been around in the company for so many years and have the experience that everyone keeps referring to. And they are the ones that influencing you to push things forward. Who should run this? The guy who understands this. He needs to understand not only how to create these connections and move these people forward, but how to challenge them and not being too, I would say, kind of like already tainted with the corporate culture way, but really thinking about new and exciting ways to get there by harnessing what he understands with the large organization and how it acts.
I love that. And I think, if I'm sitting here as an executive, it is hard to let go of that control and trust that guy that really knows what's going on, that knows the market, that knows the competitors, that knows the technology, knows what we can do, the art of the possible with our manufacturing environment. You have any advice for me as an executive as I think through that, besides buy your book, I'm sure, but as I think through that, how do I let go of that control without being irresponsible?
You do it in small steps, which means you don't lose control from day one on everything. Start small on things that are less important for you. Gain trust with the people you work with. Give them the feeling that you trust them and work your way from there. So start from projects that could be very interesting, but not in the core of the business, and work your way in order to get into the real core elements. Baby steps.
I kind of don't like that answer. No, but it's a good answer. It's the right answer.
In large corporations, you can't do things differently. You can't take large bets. You can. Elon Musk did a career out of it, right? So you do have these companies, but for every Elon Musk, you have thousands who fail. So it depends on what you're trying to achieve. You can swing big and then miss big or win big, but if you're trying to do it right in a structural approach, you have to start and gain the trust as you go and not kind of, jump ahead of yourself and trying to do things faster, because that's where you fail.
So what I love about that advice is we live in a world of social media bites, of sound bites, of 30-second clips, of 20-second clips, catch my attention in 3 seconds. And I think that we have started to govern that way. There's this old joke about CEOs that there are two CEOs, the one guy's coming in, the one guy's going out. And as the guy that's going out leaves, he hands 3 envelopes to the first CEO. And the CEO's like, what are these? He's like, oh, you'll know how to use these. So it's going on. It's a lot of problems in the organization. And so the guy opens the first envelope and it says, blame the last guy. So the CEO blames the last guy. And then, about 6 months later, that's not working it. So he opens up the next envelope and says, reorganize. So he reorganizes the company. Nobody knows what's going on. And we just keep pointing to the reorganization as the problem. 18 months later, the company's reorganized. Everybody now kind of knows what the problems are. And hint, they're the same problems that were last time. And so he opens the third envelope and it says, make 3 envelopes, right? And so in this soundbite world that we live in, where CEOs are coming in and coming out and they have to make quarterly earnings, and real innovation is that trust building process of saying, I need to find out who understands what's happening in the company. I need to make sure that they see the value, that they want to stick around and play this game with me. And I'm going to be here in 5 years. I'm going to be here in 10 years. And this company is going to keep relevant and innovating in an important way. It's a refreshing look. It's how we used to think about companies, I think 30 years ago. And I think we've lost that in a soundbite world.
And it's more than that. If you look at this, the best gap is between politicians and the business world, where politicians are all about short-term, very, very inspirational buzzwords and TikToks and things like that. And they get the most impressions by that without getting any sound action, right?
Totally. Well, I'll tell you what, we are running out of time in the show. So I'm going to give you a couple minutes just to talk to the audience here. And then I'll wrap us up. So floor is over to you.
Great. So I think the most important thing for me, writing books and trying to consult companies is basically giving you the ability or the mindset to think. Think about what you're doing. Don't act from a gut feeling, but really try to always question yourself. Am I doing things right? Can I do things better? Why am I doing the things am I doing? And is there a better way or better process to do that? That will enable you eventually to grow. And it refers to one of the favorite phrases that I absolutely love by Isaac Newton, when he said, if I have seen further, it's by standing on the shoulder of giants. What he basically says is, we as humans always progress by learning from the people who came before us, what they did well and what they did less well, and trying to learn from that in order to do it better.
Man, I love this. I hope that you all catch why I brought Yaron on the show today. He is an amazing innovator. He has a history of tactical work and strategic work. He knows how to connect your organization together. He's written a fantastic book that I'm going to encourage everybody to go out. I've already posted the link in the comments. Here's a picture of that book, Innovative Business Development, Implementing Transformation from Within. If you are serious about doing what's right by your company, what's right by your employees, what's right by your stockholders, you should grab this book, read it on your next vacation, on your next plane trip. It's a very easy read. It's also a profound read. If you're that executive and you're saying, hey, in the world of AI, and I know people are just sticking bumper stickers on things, I want to do innovation right. I want to do it in a meaningful way that brings value and longevity to my company. Bring Yaron in. He's going to help you, buy the book, but bring Yaron in. He's going to be able to help you and your executive team think through the strategy that you need to do, how to do it properly so that you're going to be around in 5, 10, 20 years and enjoy those stock options that you have. Your team's going to love you if you do this. So go buy the book, call up Yaron, have him come in, tell him you saw him on the Drew Sutton Leadership Show. He's going to do a special deal for you. And with that, we are out.